Live here on the Donno Drop. It's been a disappointing week, my friends, because a few weeks ago I thought maybe we'd get two parades in town. Instead, we had a couple of scrappy 8 seeds, the NHL, our Florida Panthers, our Miami Heat, and the NBA, get all the way to the championship, both to be eliminated in 5. And no parades, just, I heard some, I can't remember, might have been Joe Rose, somebody on WQAM the other day said that the kind of the word around town is the Miami sports scene made a deal with the sports gods that in order to get Messi to South Florida, they had to trade in Heat and Panthers championships. So listen, you guys know I'm one of the bigger soccer fans on this network. I love soccer, but I don't really like that trade-off because what's the best you can do with Messi? An MLS Cup championship? I mean, is that bigger than an NBA title or a Stanley Cup? I don't think so. I mean, I'm happy to have Messi down here. I'm not sure I like that trade. And the other thing, I was just saying this to Ethan Skolnick off the air, and Ethan now joins us. Ethan, I didn't like the way that, when the Heat lost that game 5 and the championship round was over, within minutes, Heat Twitter is talking about who the whale is going to be this summer, who they can trade for, talking about free agents. And it's like, I don't know, man. Call me old-fashioned, call me a masochist. I feel like I like to suffer for a couple days and think about what might have been before I start moving on, to Wales. Has that kind of been your beat the last couple of days, is figuring out who's going to be the next Heat player?
Yeah, I mean, the suffering with the Heat fans occurred during the regular season. Actually, that was the suffering up until about 3 minutes left against Chicago in the second play-in game. So I feel it's just such an unusual situation for both the Panthers and the Heat that not only did their seasons track completely all the way up into how many games they lost in the finals, and also that their best players both were hurt. Jimmy played through his ankle, but God knows what Kachuk and Ekblad were dealing with by the end of that Panther series. But I don't really think that Heat fans were prepared to suffer this year because they weren't prepared for any of the joy that they got. And so it was kind of like this was always going to be about what they could add to this team in the offseason. Probably would have been the case even if they won the championship. So, here we are. And I think that at least the positive for Heat fans is the fact that there's more to talk about than there was last summer. I think we went into last summer and there was this hope about Donovan Mitchell, but if you took a real look at the Heat's assets, there wasn't really anything that you could do. And then, Kevin Durant kind of came out of nowhere. But other than that, there was nothing in free agency you wanted at all, and really nothing on the trade market at all that really you wanted. I mein, the biggest trade that went down last offseason, you could argue, was Malcolm Brogdon going to Boston, which helped the Celtics for sure, but didn't end up helping them get to the finals. And so, in part because Brogdon was hurt, but also, again, not a mega star move. And so, I think that now you're here and there's smoke with guys like Lillard and Beal, etc., and it's legitimate. Yeah. There's that, and not only that, but the Heat's assets have matured at least a year. So now, you've seen, for instance, that Kyle's towards the end of that deal. So it's 1 year left in the contract, not 2. Duncan Robinson a little closer to the end of the deal. And actually Duncan restored a little bit of his value during the playoffs. Then also the picks. You do have your first round pick this year, but you also have a first round pick from last year in Jovic, who played well. And then there's, I would say played well because he didn't get the opportunity, but looked promising. Okay. And I think that would have some interest in some teams. And then also, if it really comes to it, not that the Heat want to do this, but a guy like Caleb Martin justified his contract as an attractive trade piece if, again, that becomes a deal breaker type situation and you've got to make something happen. And so I think as we go into this, there's a legitimate reason to talk about all this stuff now, whereas I thought last summer it was a lot of hope trafficking when there really wasn't a lot that was going to actually happen.
All right, we're going to get into a couple of the specific players that are being talked about. I just want to remind everybody, this episode of the Donno Drop is brought to you by our friends at UBreak Wheel Fix. If you have some curb rash, you damage your wheels, you know who to call. We're also brought to you by Prize Picks, and there's still, I know that Stanley Cup and NBA playoffs are over, but there's still plenty of action, Ethan, because their soccer just never stops. Major League Baseball, obviously, going on. So people have opportunities there. And betteredge.com, you can get great action at Better Edge. We'll talk more about these in a little bit. But, okay, so Ethan, the name that has not only been coming up again over the last day or two, but this name comes up annually for the Miami Heat.
For a decade.
I feel like he's going to end up playing with the Wizards until he's 45. Like, he's going to be like their Udonis Haslem. So Bradley Beal's name comes up again. So is this actually the year when the Wizards are going to do a legit rebuild and they're going to deal Bradley Beal? Do you think it finally happens? And are the Heat the top option if it does happen?
This is kind of like wanting the girl for years and years and years. And then, well, I'm not going to get too specific here, but then after 4 years, things occur that make you not want the girl as much anymore. But now the girl wants you. I don't know. I mean, look, there's been smoke with Bradley since he was 25 years old with the Heat. And, he's been in the league forever at this point. If you remember how young he was when he came out of University of Florida, he still can be an elite scorer. But I think if you look at his last couple of seasons and some of the percentages and also some of the defensive effort, I don't know that he's quite the megastar that we thought he was a couple of years ago. But again, the Heat are going to look at that, and we'll get to some of the specifics of this, but they're going to look at it like he's been in a kind of a no-win situation. And so it saps some of it out of him, and that he comes to a situation like Miami, he'll be rejuvenated. And obviously we've seen the Heat have done this with numerous players, over the past 25 years since Pat's taken over. The thing with Beal is this. I don't think that the compensation for him in terms of what they have to give up is anywhere near what it would be for Lillard, even though Lillard's older. So it is an easier play, and there also is, although it's a very difficult thing to get this done, and you have to thread a needle completely and not re-sign Gabe or Max or anybody else. But there is a potential path. It's low probability of getting both Beal and Porzingis, which in Porzingis' case kind of would be the perfect big next to Bam, as we always sort of talk about what you would need there.
Right.
But the big issue with Beal is the money, and it's just. I mean, it's outrageous what he's getting paid for the next 3 seasons. And so it's kind of like, okay, are you sure? Because, I mean, you're already looking at a team that is up against, the tax. I don't think Mickey and the Harrison's going to be able to get out of the tax this time, no matter what kind of machinations that, Andy is able to pull for them. And so, then it's become, are you going to hit the second apron, which the CBA just went in? So to me, this is more, and we're going to get into this on 5 on the Floor. It's more of a value. Like, what is Bradley Beal's value to the Heat right now financially, honestly? And is it worth it to take yourself out of anything else in the future? And, I know Heat fans are going to jump all over me for this, but I always come back to this. Is he that much better than Tyler Herro at this stage?
Yeah.
That it's worth spending that much more money and giving up additional assets? I feel like most Heat fans would probably say yes, but I don't think it's the slam dunk that maybe it would have been a year or two ago.
Okay, so everybody is asking. I was about to ask about Dame Lillard. He said it during the finals. Actually, he mentioned the Heat on a podcast about if he were to get traded, the Heat and I think the Nets were another one that he mentioned as possible destinations. So this is loaded, Ethan. Yeah. But I mean, how likely is it that something, whether it's the Heat or anyone else, could happen with Dame? And how much do you have to give up for a guy like that?
Well, I love the Dame fit. I mean,
me too.
Whereas I'm kind of lukewarm on the Beal fit. Dame is an alpha killer. Like, and I really feel like, to me, the motivations for Dame and Beal to stay where they were are different. I respect a lot of things about Bradley Beal, but I honestly think he stayed for the money. I feel like that's what it. I do feel Dame stayed for loyalty. I think there is a KG thing there, and we saw later, and finally KG relented, left Minnesota, won his championship. I mean, if you could script the perfect player, maybe not age-wise, but Dame played at a very high level this past year once he got back from injury. If you were to say the perfect player to play next to Jimmy and Bam is the guy who is not afraid to take those shots at the end of the game, would allow Jimmy to do what he wants to do, which is facilitate, do a little bit of everything that's necessary, and take the pressure off Bam as a scorer. Dame becomes your leading scorer immediately when he arrives in the door. Beal would probably too, but I just think that the ball would be in Dame's hands all the time. And I mean, I just think that he's a perfect fit. He's a key culture fit in every conceivable way. Okay. But is this really going to happen? Now, there's more smoke than there's been. I will say that. The people who have come out talking about this potentially getting done with him leaving are the kind of people who would know. If you listen to Chris Haynes, who I know very well, and I covered the Cavs with Haynes one year, and I'm friends with Chris. And
how many years total did you cover the Cavs? That must have sucked.
It did completely suck. It was 1 year.
Just 1 year. Okay.
It sucked horribly. But I got to know Joe Vardon and Jason Lloyd and Chris Haynes and Dave McMenamin very well during that 1 year. I'll say this for Haynes. He knows everything Dame's thinking. Like that's the guy who in a lot of ways, everybody's got an athlete in this business if they goes places who kind of help them get there by their relationship. He's got a very close relationship with Dame Lillard, and he has repeatedly said that this could happen and it could be Miami. And so when he's saying that, and then you hear it out of Dame's mouth, the relationship between Dame and Bam. I just feel, and I know Dame is comfortable playing with Jimmy. And I know I got killed a few months ago for reporting that Donovan Mitchell had some concerns about playing with Jimmy. I know Donovan came over the top on me on Twitter, challenged that whole report. I can tell you that I hold to the reporting that I heard of people around. Not that Donovan doesn't like Jimmy, he does. Worked out with Jimmy in Miami. That's what I'd heard, that, Jimmy can be a lot. Okay. My understanding is Dame is willing to take all of that on and wants it. But again, it's based on other factors to a certain degree. He kind of threw out an ultimatum about sort of trade the number 3 pick and get me, a contending ready star. I don't know that guy exists right now. Like, Pascal Siakam, is that enough to put Dame in the Western Conference Finals conversation? I'm not sure. Does Toronto give him up? And there aren't a whole bunch of other names. And there's also the issue of re-signing Jeremy Grant. So I think a lot of this is dependent on next Thursday. I think if the Blazers hold that pick and make a pick, and let's say that Charlotte, which to me is overthinking as they always do, which is why they always butcher the draft. If Charlotte passes on Scoot to take Brandon Miller, and then so Scoot is the guy that drops to 3, and again he's a future all-star at Dame's position. Is that going to be something is that going to be a positive for Dame? Hey, stay and groom this guy and see where we can go, or is that going to be another kind of push out the door? Like, okay, you didn't get me somebody who's ready to play now. We need front court help, or we need this, or we need that. And now I want to go to Miami, and if that happens, then it gets tilted in their direction. And we've always said, and Pat has been open about this. Like, we need somebody to say that they want to be here. I mean, that's how, when you don't have the most assets, that's how this thing works. And then it's not always going to work.
That's how it worked with Jimmy. Yeah, it's
exactly how it worked with Jimmy. It changed the whole franchise. Now it's not always going to work, because sometimes the owner, management, they will extend you where you want to go, or they'll find other assets. Look, Kawhi didn't really want to go to Toronto. He ended up winning a championship there. Yeah. Kyrie,
and he still left after that.
He still left. Kyrie wanted to go to LA at the trade deadline, and the Nets owner wasn't going to do that for him, right? I would think that Portland would take care of Dame if he does it the right way. But again, they got to run a basketball team. They're not a charity organization. And if they don't like the Heat's assets, or they don't like what the Heat's assets can get them in the form of picks and other things like that, like, you could trade Herro somewhere else to get picks potentially if somebody else wants Tyler's contract and send those to Portland, match salaries with Lowry and Robinson, etc. But again, it's no guarantee that Portland's going to be like, okay, that's the offer we want. Dame wants to play in Miami, and so we're going to make it happen for him. You would hope they would do right by a guy who did right by them, but it doesn't always occur. So what would I say the chances are? I think the chances are more likely for Beal than Lillard. I just, because it's less, because it just feels like the drumbeat there is it's less to give up. And I feel like Washington is finally recognizing they have new ownership, and I think or new management. I feel like they're finally realizing, listen, we're stuck in the middle, in the lower middle, and we've been there forever. And it's time to rebuild. And if that's the case, then to get off of Beal's money, Miami might not have to give up all that much.
So if you were to make a deal for Beal, and let's assume, Tyler Herro, who probably goes the other way in basically any of these big trades, unfortunately for him. But so if you were to, trio Beal with Jimmy and Bam and hopefully have a respectable supporting cast, I mean, how much better are a team that, just overachieved mightily to get to the NBA Finals just now, but how much better would they be if you put Beal in the core?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. We can talk about, how much better is Beal than Herro, but they didn't have Tyler Herro during the playoffs.
That's fair. That's true. They didn't have either of them. Yeah.
Right. So you're literally, you would be adding Bradley Beal to a team that got to the finals. Now, you may not have all of the other pieces, okay?
Right.
Because I don't know that depending on the economics and the offers, I don't know that first thing, I don't believe at this point Max is going to be back. I'm not convinced of it. But knowing Max a little bit and following him during here and hearing him yesterday, we all said I'm 5 on the floor. It sounded like Gabe was kind of making a pitch to stay, and Max was kind of saying, I really appreciate everything here, but he knows he's not going to get the offer he wants from here. He thinks it's going to be for somewhere else. That's not information. It's just, in talking to agents and then kind of what played out yesterday, it's consistent with the fact that I think it's more likely that Gabe's going to be back to Max. But again, some of that depends on who's moved out. Like if Duncan Robinson has moved out, then Max becomes more important, more valuable, because you need a specialist shooter in there somewhere. Or if, Lowry has moved out, then Gabe becomes even more valuable if you're not getting Dame Lillard to play point guard, right? So I think there's a lot of factors here, but to say, look, they got to the finals on smoke and mirrors. That's just the case. And you're adding an elite talent in Bradley Beal, who has a lot of tread on the tires, by the way, even though he's young, because he did come in at 19. He has fallen off defensively. We're going to get into that tonight. The metrics for him the past couple of years have not been particularly good. But he's a scorer. We know he's a scorer, and he doesn't have the alpha personality that Lillard has. So again, more of that will fall onto Jimmy. But Bradley Beal could probably carry them a lot of nights in the regular season, at least, which would keep Jimmy fresher for the playoffs, which is something else to consider here. And that matters, because I don't know that it makes sense to ever play Jimmy Butler more than 60 regular season games again. I just say you have to do whatever you can to get him through the postseason. And look, you don't know if Josh Hart's going to take out his ankle, but you have to put yourself in the best position. And so I don't think Jimmy ever plays more than 60 again, which means, Bradley Beal hasn't stayed all that healthy either. But, can Bradley Beal lead you in scoring 25 times and make it a little bit easier on Jimmy?
Well, great stuff as always from Ethan J. Skolnick, and you already gave people a taste of what's coming up tonight on 5 on the Floor. They can't avoid it, Ethan, but let people know where they can find it, because it's all over the internet. It's all over every podcast platform.
That's what we call ourselves here at the 5 Reasons Sports Network. We are unavoidable. Find us on Red Circle, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and here on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. We appreciate all the support. We got all the way up to number 11 in basketball podcasts. At one point, we couldn't crack the top 10, but you know what? If Dame's traded here, I think we're going to bump ahead of some of the national pods here. So we appreciate all the support for sure.
Well, it's cool because it's not always like with those charts, like when you cover like one specific team, and obviously this team made it to the finals, which I'm sure helped. But it's hard because a lot of like the big time national shows.
Well, we're behind Shannon Sharp and the low pods, so we're low pods. Wow. So we're doing okay, but it's not for me; it's for Brady. We all know that, so that's what it is. So
Brady is the man. Ethan is the man as well. Enjoy your evening coming up, sir.
Thanks, Alex.
Awesome. I was about to say enjoy the rest of your evening. It feels way later than it is, right? 5:20 p.m. Like, first of all, I'm so old now and I'm such a square. I am going to be going to bed super early tonight because I'm actually going to be tomorrow. I'm excited for this. I do this from time to time, but I'm going to be guest hosting the Joe Rose Show tomorrow. Joe is starting a vacation, but I'm going to be co-hosting tomorrow with my pal Omar Kelly. It's been a long time since I've done radio with Omar, and I know Omar's very polarizing. Some people like, I can't stand this guy because you don't like some of his football opinions, but he is, first of all, he's great because everyone has an opinion on him. You either love him or you hate him. There's not a whole lot of gray area with Omar, but he's really fun to work with, and it's probably, I don't know, it's been like at least 2 years since I've done a radio show with him because we just haven't like crossed paths. He's been working other places. I've been working other places. So that's going to be a lot of fun tomorrow. I'm going to be talking with Omar Kelly, and we're definitely going to talk some free agency. We're going to talk about some of these trade possibilities. And yes, insurance by Lynette. I 1000% agree. 5 Reasons Sports is number one. It is absolutely number one. Absolutely. And I want to remind you guys that even though, again, I know the NBA finals are over, Stanley Cup finals are over. It was a gut punch for me to see those both end badly for my teams on back-to-back nights, by the way. God. But doesn't mean you can't still be getting action at prizepicks.com and the PrizePicks mobile app, right? Because you got baseball, you've got soccer. There's got to be like some, foreign basketball leagues that are still going on. If there's a way to get action, I'm going to find it at prizepicks.com. You simply select 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players, predict if they're going to go over or under their various stat projections, and you win real money. Sign up with our code 5, F-I-V-E, and they're going to match your first deposit up to $100 at Prize Picks, which truly is daily fantasy simplified. And guys, sometimes, listen, I'm a little bit careless driving around those curbs and onto those sidewalks. Want to welcome back our friends and sponsor at UBreak Wheel Fix, the complete automotive wheel solution. You ever park too close to that sidewalk curb like me? UBreak Wheel Fix specializes in the repair of damaged wheels from bends, cracks, curb rash, or your wheels faded or peeling. You don't need to replace them. UBreak Wheel Fix can refinish them to like new, and they can trick out your wheels as well. You can get Dolphins colors, Heat colors, Inter Miami colors. Located just south of Aventura, you can reach Mark and his staff at 305-748-0112 or online at ubreakwheelfix.com. They're really active on all social media platforms at UBreak Wheel Fix. So shoot them a DM on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter and get an estimate in just minutes. So this summer, I'm doing a lot more binge watching on TV. My 5-year-old son, he just learned today what the term binge watching means, right? And listen, I'm a terrible parent. I'm going to say it right out there, okay? Because a lot of parents are like, I want to try to find a way to get my kid to play outside more often, right? I've got the opposite problem because going outside is all my son wants to do. He doesn't like being inside. There's a problem, though, because he's too young for me to let him, he's not a free-range child. I can't just let him, run around outside. I got to be out there with him. It's hot as hell, okay? It was June in Miami, 10,000% humidity out there. My kid loves to play outside, so I'm trying to get more ways to keep him inside so I can stay cool. He just learned the term binge watching today, and he and I were binge watching DuckTales, the 1980s, 90s version that I used to watch when I was a kid, which is awesome to share that with him. And we were watching these Curious George cartoons that kind of put me to sleep. The DuckTales were awesome. And he's like, Dad, we're binge watching. He's excited about it. Never going to want to go outside again. If he wants to go outside again, that's fine. But let's wait till autumn when it cools off a little bit. It's kind of what I'm looking at with him. And yeah, Ethan is awesome as well. And Ethan laid it down as far as the basketball fit goes. I 1,000% co-sign with Jeffrey Molina here. Dame would be, if you're just purely talking basketball fit, someone who's going to help you win a championship. If you pair him up, trio him up, as I like to say, with Jimmy and Bam, Dame Lillard would turn Miami into just about a super team, especially when you got Eric Spoelstra coaching that team. You got just about a super team there. Bradley Beal, he makes your team better, but I'm less convinced. And obviously you're going to have to give up assets for either one, way more assets you would figure to get Dame Lillard to Miami. But I'm less sold on Beal as the type of guy who's going to push the Heat over the top. But Ethan made a great point. It's like the Heat were able to make it 2 and 3 wins away from a championship into the NBA Finals without even having a healthy Tyler Herro and obviously not having Dame Lillard. So if you were to throw Dame into that mix, even if you have to trade Herro to get him, your team is going to be better. And hopefully you can create another improbable run, or less improbable if you have a better trio, but hopefully you can create another run to the NBA Finals next year. Oh, man. So I hope everyone is having a good summer so far. And listen, this is the time of year when we made it farther than most NBA teams do, right? The offseason is a lot shorter because of that. We're just a week away from the NBA draft, which for the Heat, they got the 18th overall pick. But when Pat Riley is running your organization, it's like, okay, do we use the pick? Who do we use it on? Or do we make some deal on draft night? Do we deal the pick away? So there's going to be a lot of intrigue and excitement heading into the NBA draft, just wondering what we're going to do with that pick if we don't, deal the pick away. And then, my goodness, the talk all summer long is going to be about possible trades. It's going to be about free agency. And I think the next time we do one of these, we'll talk a little bit more about free agent options, but we wanted to talk about trade options today because those are a lot flashier when you're talking about guys like Beal and Dame, who, especially Beal has been linked to the Heat so many times. Oh, man. I'd trade, I think he means Tyler, not Taylor. I'd trade Tyler for a bag of combos and 2 Arizona iced tea. I mean, I haven't had a combo since the 90s. They still make combos. The Arizona iced tea, it's good. Inflation was tragic because when all that inflation hit within the last couple of years, they actually like the 99-cent or the dollar Arizona iced tea is now like $1.25. Like they had to raise the price on that for the first time in probably like 2 decades, which was really, really sad. But man, wow, Miles, I'm glad you had a good run. Miles, did you run for miles, or where were we out there? How many miles did you run? So that's going to just about do it for us. Remember, guys, if you're looking for a more traditional sports betting experience, but with a twist, try betteredge.com. And here's the thing, Better Edge is fully legal in the state of Florida because you're not betting against a sports book. There is no sports book. There is no house, which also means there are no hidden fees. You're betting against other people. Better Edge is brilliant because they combine sports betting with a social platform, right? It's legal in Florida because you're betting against other people, so it's technically not sports betting. So if you want to try it out, betteredge.com, it's BETTOR edge.com, and use our code 5RSN. And if you use our code 5RSN, they're going to hook you up with a $20 bonus just for signing up. And you can get the lines you want at Better Edge. You're looking to bet on some Marlins games. You're looking to bet on some, soccer games, international friendlies, MLS, whatever you got going on. Check out the lines at betteredge.com and try it out with our code 5 for $20 in free play money just for signing up. And huge shout out to everybody who tuned in. Thanks again to Ethan Skolnick for joining us. We'll talk to you again. I'm going to try to do another one of these tomorrow. It just depends on, whether my son, after, we did all that binge watching. But the reason why we were binge watching shows is he and I, my 5-year-old and I, had just within the last couple of weeks, we both had the flu. And within the last couple of weeks, we finally recovered from the flu. And then he somehow caught something else. He's been feverish the last couple of days. It's been a whole thing. So depending on how he's doing tomorrow, I'm going to try to do another one of these tomorrow afternoon. So maybe we'll see it tomorrow. Maybe we won't, but we will see you again soon. Donno drop right here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. See ya.